the roll call. If the superintendent will call the roll, please.
Lauren Andrews.
Yes, here.
Tom Pico, not present. Amy Williams Spears.
Here.
Susan Thomas.
Here.
Doug Curtis Jr.
Here.
Lane Sturdivant.
Here.
Gerald Winan.
Here.
Chelsea Everett. Chelsea Everett.
I think she's frozen.
She's muted, maybe.
Oh dear. Mark Lewis.
Here.
Carol
Did you get me?
Backhoffner.
Here.
Chelsea Everett.
For Chelsea and say that she is, there she is.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. If everybody can mute their speaker, and John, if you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance because you have the flag, that would be great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Number 5, consent agenda to acknowledge the retirement of Lorraine Lash, school nurse, effective August 31st, 2020. I'm actually forgetting, do we need to vote on that or not? Because it's consent. Yeah.
Not under the consent agenda.
So thank you for your service to the staff and kids of our district, Lorraine. Thank you very much. And wish you luck in your retirement. Six, business items. A, acceptance of the computation and declaration of votes 2020-2021 budget and approval and signing of the assessment of community school district tax. Is there a vote, a motion? Carol, and seconded by Chelsea. All right, John or Pete, if you want to lead us through this, just to in the public what we're doing here.
So what the board is doing tonight is accepting the votes in the 5 towns for the 4 questions on the ballot on July 14th. Question 1, which was the RSU 13 general fund budget, passed 2,501 to 1,015. Question 2, which was the adult ed portion of the RSU 13 budget, passed 2,336 to 880. Question 3, which was the Midco School Technology budget, passed in our 5 towns 2,575 to 645. And their adult ed budget passed 2,405 to 782. They add up all their votes in all of their, I think it's 18 communities to for their final vote. But ours all passed by margin of at least 2 to 1. So this is a, after comment, a roll call vote to accept at this time. And then the next piece will be to a roll call vote to send the bills to the 5 towns.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? Any questions, thoughts, or concerns? Carol?
Do we need a separate motion for the sending of the bills to the towns? I believe we do.
So the way it was presented, they were both presented together, I believe.
Well, whatever we need legally here. So one vote to do it, or we need 2 roll calls, you said.
We do need 2 roll calls. So 2 motions would make sense.
All right. All right. So the first motion and roll call then is on
the computation and declaration of votes.
All right. Anybody have any questions before we do the roll call? Seeing none, the superintendent will call the roll.
Lauren Andrews,
Yes.
Amy Williams Spears,
Yes.
Susan Thomas,
Yes.
Doug Curtis Jr.,
Yes.
Lane Sturdivant,
Yes.
Gerald Winan,
Yes.
Chelsea Everett,
Yes.
Mark Lewis,
Yes.
Carol Backhoffner.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, so then we need a motion of the second one, and if Pete, if you could sort of just summarize what that second motion needs to be.
So the next would be to approve the signing of the assessments to each of our member communities.
All right, is there a motion?
So move.
Go with Susan and then Carol seconded. Any further questions on this motion? If not, the superintendent will call the roll.
Lauren Andrews,
Yes.
Amy Williams Spears,
Yes.
Susan Thomas,
Yes.
Doug Curtis Jr.,
Yes.
Lane Sturdivant,
Yes.
Gerald Winan,
Yes.
Chelsea Everett,
Yes.
Mark Lewis,
Yes.
Carol Backhoffner.
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you. 6B, to accept the resignation of one, Nicholas Lebrecq, grade 5, South School, effective August 31, 2020. Is there a motion? Mark made the motion, second. Susan, thank you. Any questions on this? Seeing none, and thank you for your service. The superintendent will call the roll.
Lauren Andrews,
Yes.
Amy Williams Spears,
Yes.
Susan Thomas,
Yes.
Doug Curtis Jr.,
Yes.
Lane Sturdivant,
Yes.
Gerald Winan,
Yes, and thank you.
Chelsea Everett,
Yes.
Mark Lewis,
Yes.
Carol Backhoffner.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Business item 6B, number 2, Heidi Grunwald, grade 5, South School, resignation, effective August 31, 2020. Is there a motion?
So
Susan,
move.
second. Doug, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you again for your service, and the superintendent will call the roll.
Lauren Andrews,
Yes.
Amy Williams Spears,
Yes.
Susan Thomas,
Yes.
Doug Curtis Jr.,
Yes.
Lane Sturdivant,
Yes.
Gerald Winan,
Yes, and thank you.
Chelsea Everett,
Yes.
Mark Lewis,
Yes.
Carol Backhoffner.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. Sort of noting, obviously, there are 2 teachers resigning from grade 5 at South School. I assume that will present a challenge of its own coming up in terms of filling those positions and continuity for kids, but you guys will meet that extremely well. Business item 6C, to appoint Joseph Steinberger to the Midcoast School of Technology Board of Directors. Is there a motion? Carol, second. Chelsea, thank you. I'll just make a comment that Joe was interested a year or so ago, but is expressed interest like after I appointed myself, and I wanted to see some things through. Now there's an opening. So Joanne Richards resigned. And if you don't know Joanne, if she happens to be listening, I mean, she was amazing. Such a tireless advocate on that board of directors. She did it for years and years, and we just can't thank her enough for the service that she put in for our community and for our staff and students at MCST. So thank you so much, Joanne. And also feeling really good that Joe has a really good sort of focus on this and what he wants to accomplish and what's best for kids in our district going there. So really happy to appoint him. Any other questions? Yes, Gerald.
I would like to suggest that we think about a policy that actually makes all of the towns have better representation on the MCST board. Because like right now there'll be 2 of us from Rockland, if not 3. So it'd be nice to kind of spread it around to all the towns. I don't know if it's a policy or whatever, but and it has nothing to do with Joe. It's just I'd like to see it more, because like Joanne was from Thomaston, and I just see it kind of sort of spread out.
Yes, Carol.
I don't think we can make a policy that affects other districts. I think we could encourage them to make a policy that spreads it out more, but
No, Carol, this is within our district.
okay.
Yeah.
You mean spread it, oh, okay, between our 5 towns.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I wasn't clear.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's hope we can get people from the others to step up.
I think we can express that wish, but it took months, if not a year, for no one came forward. And then I appointed myself, and then Joe came forward after that. But anyway, I see your point, Gerald, and it'd be great to have that sort of spread out. It'd be fantastic. I can't predict. I don't think we all can predict if there will be, people from other towns wanting to join that board, any board, when we make an appointment and it is available to the district. So there's even a question posed to me, could someone outside the district be appointed? And I inquired with Sherry Moody, the business manager, and she said there was no policy saying there couldn't be. So anyway, we could look at a policy, but I'd have to say it would have to be rather loose, because we just typically don't get a rush of people wanting to do certain things. So I get you. Doug.
So I've served on that board about 4 years, I'm guessing, at least 3 anyways. And I served as a general person of the public like Joe did. It used to be, we used to have 2 members from the public and only 1 school board member on the Region 8 board when I served. So now the fact that we have 2 school board members on it and 1 non-school board member is a change for me.
There are 2 non-school boards, because
We have a
Bill.
total of 4 members then?
yeah, Bill Purse is on it too.
Okay, I didn't know. We used to have 3, so now we have 4. Okay. So I'm more inclined to say this, particularly if a person's in the trades and working in the trades, I don't care what town they come from. I really don't care. I think it's important that people who serve on that board have an interest to serve it, and as long as they're contributing and doing a good job, and I don't have a problem what town they come from. I don't care if they come from the same town. The idea is that they represent our district, and I'm perfectly happy with that. I don't think we actually need a policy, Gerald, just so you know, but I mean, I like the idea of spreading it around, but if you're a carpenter or a food service person or wherever you come from, and that's something you have a passion to do, I would much rather have those types of people on the board working there than having by town where they come from. That's just my opinion.
All right, thank you, Gerald.
So I don't know Bill's background. I know that he knits, but my guess is that all 4 of our members now do not come from the trades.
That's too bad.
Yep. Well, again, when there's another opening, we can look for people to represent more towns and more trades. Yep. Chelsea.
So I was just curious, do we have terms for these appointments? And do we also have sort of a process by which, we have an application process and things like that? Because I think some of these issues might be better addressed by having some, if we had term limits, people would be able to say, oh, I might be interested in that next time it comes open, and then we're not scrambling. There's a little bit more predictability around it. And I will say, I did reach out to the apprentice shop. I reached out to Stalehouse a couple of times. It's really hard to get people interested in serving. And I think that recruitment is something we should really seriously think about, because I agree with what everyone's saying, is that the more diversity we have on that board, the better.
John, do you know if we can set term limits for that kind of thing as our school board, or is that something MCST would have to set?
I don't know for sure, Lauren, but I kind of tend to doubt it, but I'd be happy to look into it by discussing it with those folks if the board would like me to do that.
And then secondly, Chelsea, like if we had a bunch of people wanting to do it, then we would have to institute a process on how to make that selection, but we've never literally ever had that situation come up. Maybe now, you know, with the new building and what it's doing and everything else, you know, there's going to be a whole lot more interest. I kind of think that, but I don't know that.
The policy is very open-ended.
Policy's open-ended.
The term of office for members of the cooperative board shall be staggered, multi-year terms to the extent possible, and a board member shall serve until a successor is appointed by the sending school board.
So that's their policy, Pete?
That's their policy.
So I kind of think that might supersede what we do, but I just don't know. Sorry, I don't know. Gerald, go ahead.
Again, all of this has nothing to do with Joe. It's just I just wanted to bring up that that it would be really, really good if we had better representation amongst all the towns, the 5 towns.
Yeah.
And it'd be like Bill's from Rockland, I'm from Rockland, Joe's from Rockland, and of course you're from Cushing.
Yep.
It'd be nice to spread it. And again, I totally agree with Doug. It'd be really nice to get some folks that are from the trades on this board. I mean, I'm sort of quasi-trade because I work, you know, in the fields, but I'm not an electrician. I'm not a carpenter. I just dabble with it, you know, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Yes, Chelsea.
So the way I was hearing that policy was that a person serves until the sending board replaces them. So that makes me think we could set a policy of our own that we replace people on a regular schedule or we re-up them. But that they have, I think we could get around that pretty easily. I think that maybe Tom's not here, but maybe that's something that we should ask the policy committee to consider if it's a good choice for our board.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good. Yes, Carol.
Well, I think we could do that for our board member representatives, but I don't think we can set a policy for somebody who's coming in from the general public. I think that
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah, Chelsea's hearing their policy and it does sort of like allow us to replace someone, it sounds like, but anyway, we have to do more research.
Well, the rest of it says the appointment to the cooperative board shall be carried out at the annual organizational meeting or as soon as practicable held in the respective administrative unit. So I know on another board that I'm serve on, we actually just reappoint people annually at the organizational meeting, all 4 members.
Okay. Okay. That could be done too. That way, if people want to keep serving and that's our pleasure to do that, we would reappoint. Yep. Okay. Any further questions, thoughts, or discussion? Seeing none, the superintendent will call the roll.
Lauren Andrews,
Yes.
Amy Williams Spears,
Yes.
Susan Thomas,
Yes.
Doug Curtis Jr.,
Yes, with pleasure for Joe.
Wayne Sturdivant,
Yes.
Gerald Winan,
Yes.
Chelsea Everett,
Yes.
Mark Lewis,
Yes.
Carol Backhoff.
Yes.
Unanimous, thank you.
All right, thank you. And business item 6D, authorize the superintendent to file claims in a multi-district litigation and bankruptcy litigation in an effort to recoup damages, including the expenditure of public funds to address the impact of the opioid epidemic on students, staff, other staff, and the taxpayers of this district caused by certain defendants. Is there a motion?
So move.
A second? Chelsea. Discussion, and Peter, John, do you want to describe again, to us what we're looking at here and how this evolved, quickly evolved?
Yeah.
Well, I'll start us off. I think Peter's probably more versed with the actual details of this, but in short, we were contacted by Drummond and Woodson, who had been contacted by another legal firm, a national legal firm. And Drummond and Woodson's inquiry was, would we be interested in joining a class action lawsuit against drug manufacturers seeking damages due to their alleged making opioids over available and claiming that they were safe and causing potential harm with children of mothers who had been using opioids. And we've talked many, many times in meetings with our special education director and myself about how we feel that the opioid crisis has impacted our special education population. So I was immediately interested, had my curiosity piqued. And Drummond and Woodson really tell us that there's no risk to the school district by signing on to this. So we literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain should they prevail in this class action lawsuit. So I felt it prudent to bring this to the board. Peter has communicated with them and got the language for the board vote. And so I guess I'll ask Peter if he wants to add anything to this.
No, it seemed natural based on the conversations the board's had about our special education costs and the opioid epidemic being partially to blame for that. First, I think we apologize for the timeliness of this. I know it feels rushed because it is rushed. We heard about this from Drummond Woodson on Friday, the 10th. They had already done their due diligence to investigate the lawsuit. They had vetted the attorneys that are representing plaintiffs nationally, but they were contacted and asked if they wanted to include their Maine and New Hampshire clients in this lawsuit, because specifically schools are being used to show the kind of the cause and effect of the opioids with special education costs specifically. So I was part of a meeting on Tuesday with Drummond Woodson as well as other school districts around the two states. We heard more about it. We asked a lot about risk, which again, as John said, is really, they see that as none. They recommend that we are part of this. There's no sharing of student data at any point. There might be a little bit of time involved on my end, and maybe on Jessica's end, but really not a lot. The Purdue Pharma is the defendant in this, and back in the mid 2000s, they were had a lawsuit that they settled with opioids and immediately started selling them again for the last 10 years. More suits were brought in 2017. They declared bankruptcy in 2019 after they tried to settle with some governments. Immediately after they attempted to settle, the family took out $10.5 billion from the company. So this lawsuit is trying to track some of that money down and make the family personally responsible for some of this. I think there's about $22 billion they see in assets that could be split. We wouldn't expect to see anything, in it for at least a year, maybe up to 5 years, if at all. And But Drummond Woodson kind of, they think that there is something to this, and that they could actually help with our special ed budgets when there is a settlement. Most likely a settlement will be structured that the money would go towards special education budgets at the school systems that are part of the lawsuit.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Discussion? Yes, Chelsea.
So I was just a little bit confused about what settlement we're joining, because, so is this the Purdue settlement that happened in October for 10 to 12 billion? Because what you're saying, Pete, sounds a little bit different. And I also couldn't tell, are we joining a specific lawsuit or are we joining lawsuits in general?
We're joining a specific lawsuit of the plaintiffs. The part of the what happened was when that settlement was reached, a number of the plaintiffs didn't accept it. So a lot of the states didn't accept that. So they went on and started building a new case, and then they have added the school systems, beginning with, I think Chicago was the first one to join on. And so now that's been kind of another tactic that they've used. So I think they think there's more money there. And so it's a different lawsuit, but it's related to that one from 2019.
So this one has not been litigated yet.
Correct.
Okay. I have some other questions, but I'll let Doug go first.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, Chelsea, go ahead, because I got a bunch of them.
I do. I need to glance at what some of them are. So one of the things in one of the documents we got sent, it talked about class members and different levels of a class member. And I wondered what kind of class member we're going to be. Are we a regular one? Are we a special class member? And how does that affect settlements or anything else?
I don't have that answer.
Okay. I guess one of the questions I have is why this lawsuit and not other lawsuits? Because it does seem like I'm not entirely sure, but it seemed like a lot of the other lawsuits were sort of consolidated into this federal court. And so I don't know if that means there are going to be fewer options or if they're going for some kind of global settlement. So this is our one shot, or if there are potentially other options or even more cases we could join. Do you have a sense for that?
My sense is that there'll be more cases to bring, and that part of the reason to do this would be to get ourselves involved now, do some of the legwork now, and be ready to go when some of the other lawsuits go. I suspect that they, depending on how this one turns out, many of the other pending lawsuits, or even if not pending, just the ones they think about, will probably be settled very fast. I think that that's really kind of the aim of this, is get one, especially Purdue, which is kind of considered one of the biggest fish, I guess, for lack of a better term, abusers of the whole opioid passive drugs. I think that eventually that will be part of other ones, or we could at least be part of the settlements.
All right, and then I think, hold on, let me look at this.
Honestly, I think that the next step, if this lawsuit is successful and others are brought, I suspect that the settlements would just be more global and probably be addressed, and the states themselves would actually be the recipients, and the states would then distribute the money to school systems, probably through whatever method, the way the Volkswagen money was distributed, the way other money has been distributed through states.
Well, one thing I was reading was saying that one of the reasons that municipalities are actually going for these lawsuits is they haven't been happy with how the states have handled previous ones, because they don't feel like the money trickles down enough. So I think there's always that question of like, is this the best route to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish? And I feel like I'm having a little trouble assessing that, because I don't understand the sort of legal language well. My last question was, I noticed that okay, let me make sure I have this right. In the resolution, we mentioned Drummond and Woodson, but in the contract, I guess that's the right term, that follows, they're not mentioned. And I didn't know if that affected the 25% lawyer's fees or cost structures in any way.
It does not. The second piece that does not include them is specifically written, and Drummond Woodson said that that one document could not be changed. It had to be presented as it is to be part of this lawsuit to the court, to go to the judge on the 30th.
Okay, all right. Because they do have a clause in there that I thought probably covered Drummond Woodson, but I wasn't sure.
So yeah, the law firms will take 25% plus costs.
Okay, I'm still confused, but those are the only questions I know how to ask.
It's new to me too.
Thank you. Doug?
Okay, so just a few comments first. I really don't like learning about stuff like this on Village Suit, number one. I know the email went out last night, I guess at 8:15, whatever night it went out, maybe it was Tuesday, but I literally didn't see it until after I read the story in Village Suit today. So just it doesn't matter what the issue is, that's not how I want to find out about it. And then Pete was, I did call him up and get some stuff, and so I was able to get the documents printed off today, and I read them quickly, but I did read them all as best I could. I'm going to tell you how I feel personally about the issue, and then I'm going to tell you a couple things. I certainly am not knowledgeable about all opioids and how they work. I mean, I've actually used them myself when I had to have knee surgery to recover from pain. So I was fortunate. I did not get hooked on it, but I have some friends that have, and it's a very serious thing. And my wife, as a former teacher, has had students that have been obviously impacted by the opioid crisis. And so I don't take it lightly, regardless of what we do. When I read the proposal that Pete sent to us, he mentioned about the 25% recovery for the attorneys and all the sustaining costs, which could be quite high. It could be over 50% of whatever they recover easily, based on what's in this document that they ask us to sign. Everything in this document that I read is primarily for the attorneys. It doesn't say a whole lot about us, per se, other than we are going to cooperate 100% and do what they want us to do. In other words, do the legwork for them. And it doesn't really say like how far back we're going to have to go. Are we going to go back 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I mean, my opioid personal thing happened in 2001. Are we going back 19 years? Does that cover all these kids that came up through the district or other districts during that period of time? I can't tell by reading this document. I have no idea how far this is going back and how much work it's going to be for our staff, the superintendent. To me, I think the return is going to be pretty low, if anything. And I would disagree with Pete on this issue. I think it could drag on for years and years. We may get something, we may not. As a generic thing, I'm not real happy with class action lawsuits when we get pennies, literally pennies on the dollar. It just doesn't seem like worth our time. I have no idea of quantifying how much money would have gone to RSU 13, how much money would have gone to MSAD 5, how much money would have gone to MSAD 50. And I don't think this district is capable of trying to determine that. There's no questions attached here. We don't know what it is. The one thing that I want to tell the other board members, if you haven't heard this, and Peter, you correct me if I'm wrong in this, we've given a very short time frame to respond to this by the end of the month. And if that's true, I don't like that either. You know, I like to study things and try to figure out what will this cost us to do? What are they asking us to do? How much staff time are we going to be involved with this? And what is the likelihood of return and reaction going to get? In addition to whatever could happen in the future. Some of the questions that Chelsea raised as well about future litigation. I mean, just across the board, with the information I have and knowing what I know about it, I know it's damaged our kids. I don't think it should all go to special education by any means. Personally, I think some of it should go to the families of the kids that are damaged, myself. But even though we had these costs that have multiplied over like the last 20 years, how you calculate those, I have no feel for that. But I don't think it should just go for special education. And I think that myself, I don't feel equipped tonight to vote on this. And if we do have to vote on it tonight, I'm probably going to vote no, because I don't know, I don't want to put our staff in a situation where we're going to spend a lot of time on this. And Peter said we probably wouldn't spend that much time on it. But I don't know, if it's over a period of 20 years, how could you possibly say that? I mean, that's my feeling. So that's, from when I read this document, and Chelsea made a good point about Drummond Woodson not even being on it. I mean, how do you throw something at us like this, like overnight, and expect us to think about this and logically vote on it? I just don't see how you can do it. So that's kind of my 2 cents for it.
So I view this as a taxpayer relief lawsuit, because the money comes to our district if we get some, and we just reduce the amount of taxes we have to raise by local property taxpayers to fund our special education program. Clinically speaking, it is the worst thing that has ever happened to families that I can think of. There is typical abuse and there is typical neglect, and people like me treat that all the time. This is deep neglect. This has never been seen before. These are kids who come to school who don't know their names because they've not been attended to at all. I hear stories of kids being locked in rooms like for 4 years. They just get some food and whatever. It's just no socialization, no touch, no kind of basic human needs met. It's called reactive attachment disorder, and is incredibly hard to change and treat. And these companies are knowingly fed this stuff into the system of America and Maine, making money. And if we can recoup some of that we've had to pay for in school districts because of the care these kids deserve and need, then I say we do it, and we will reduce the property tax burden by getting it. Amy.
I just want to 100% agree with you, Lauren. And this is the biggest problem in our school district. This is the biggest problem with it's the special education problem in our district is not kids born with disabilities. It's people being born into families who have addiction problems. I'm sorry, I just heard feedback, and I guess it's me. So that's in my mind the biggest problem. Also, it's creating, as you said, it's creating an increasing tax burden. I don't think, I've worked in business for a long time with companies who've been in various lawsuits about things. There is not going to be a huge burden on us. It's going to be a burden on, there's going to be some burden on the staff members and maybe a little bit for us, but mostly it's going to be the lawyers doing their jobs. And it's a step in the right direction. And if we don't actually get any headway with this particular lawsuit, we've at least learned a bit about the process. We're better prepared for the next one. We're sending the right signal to the taxpayers. We're firing a shot over the irresponsible parents' head. There's a whole bunch of potential really good improvements that we can see from taking this step, I think.
All right, thank you. Carol.
Yeah, first of all, opioid addiction is not necessarily irresponsibility on the part of the parent, although in many cases it is. People get hooked on opioids from post-surgical situations and overprescriptions by doctors. So I think it's a multifaceted problem. I got a little concerned when John was describing it and spoke about the causation being at the feet of mothers. And that raised the hairs on my head, because it isn't just mothers who become addicted. It's fathers and older siblings. So I'm a little concerned about what the language of the lawsuit says, not the thing that we had looked at today. And I'm with Doug on, we got to see these things sooner. So yes, it would be good to send a message, but Sonny Perdue and his family are not going to even know about our message. I think our message might be better spent elsewhere. That family is as corrupt as can be, and they're doing everything to hide their money in order to not take responsibility. So I would like them to take responsibility, but I don't want to be publicly blaming and calling irresponsible parents who may or may not have, in many cases, do not have the ultimate responsibility for the drugs that they were pushed by their doctors. So I'm probably going to vote no.
Okay, thank you. John?
Now, I apologize for my inartful characterization of that, and trust me, I don't just blame the mothers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Just had a question that goes back a few minutes about the mechanics of this. If I understand this correctly, we're voting as a district whether or not to participate in this suit. But if I heard Pete correctly, that the money, if any is awarded, goes to the state. So I'm not sure why that would be. If we're voting as a district, why does the money then go to the state and then maybe some trickles down to us? Why are we assuming some of that responsibility?
That was answering the question about future lawsuits, how future ones might be settled.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any more questions? Yes, Chelsea.
I think in general, my feeling is that these opioid lawsuits are really a promising way to address a lot of our issues. But my concern is really, is this the best one? And that's where I do feel a little uncomfortable. And again, I'll echo what everyone else is saying. I particularly feel uncomfortable getting this with less than 24 hours notice. Because if I'd had it Friday, I could have looked at it over the weekend and done more than read the New York Times back issues, which would have been nice. But anyway, I do have, one of the things that I'm trying to sort of sort out is, so apparently this lawsuit originally, in order to be a part of it, you had to make a decision by June 30th. And then they extended the time to July 30th. Why did they wait till July 10th to solicit us? And us meaning New Hampshire and Maine. I'm not quite sure if there's a real value to adding us to the suit. Why did they wait so long? There's just something that feels odd to me about this.
I'm not aware of why it was done the way it was done. I don't know when Drummond Woodson was contacted. I know that they had finished their vetting process of the lawsuit and the attorneys involved in it, and reached out to the superintendents or their clients in the two states on the 10th, and set up a meeting for anybody interested in learning more for, I think that was yesterday, was the meeting that I had to go over it and to answer any questions. So it really wasn't, it was an idea on Friday. It seemed like a good idea yesterday. And once I finished my meeting, I worked with the attorneys to kind of draw up, what language would look like, and got that to John for his thought, and then he got it to Lauren to see whether he wanted to even include this on the agenda. And once that was added to the agenda and the agenda was sent out, I immediately got calls from our local 2 online newspapers about the information, and waited till at least probably about 2 hours after I sent the board package to you to send it to them. Because once we send something to the board, it is actually public. So again, I apologize for the process this time. it just seemed worth having this discussion, having you have this discussion among yourselves and figure out whether you thought it was a good idea to go forward. It really was more, giving you guys the opportunity and not trying to force you into something one way or the other.
Yeah, and I'll say that also it was delayed last night because I was indisposed and I didn't get to it like for 3 hours. So even that timing, I apologize for that. Mark?
Yeah, I was just general statement. I really don't have a problem with this getting dropped in our lap. It's good we're having this discussion, obviously, to figure out some of the more fine points, according to Pete. But Doug's concern was how much staff time is going to be used in possibly pursuing this. But I think it's going to be a lot less staff time than if we're going to try and maybe start something ourselves and explore something ourselves. That's now you're talking staff time and resources that probably we don't have. This may not be an optimal situation, but here it is. And I think Amy made some very good points that this sends a message to the community. And I think, to Carol's point, why shouldn't we get any award here? Yes, I think the parents should be awarded some, and I think the doctors who prescribe this should be held to account too. But we're the ones bearing the brunt of the cost of the special education needs of our students. So I think this would be a great way, hopefully, if this works out in as we like it to recoup some of those losses and help bolster our budget a little bit in the future.
Thank you, Mark. So Susan, go ahead, and then Lane, and then Chelsea again. Susan, go ahead. No? Yep. Hit that button.
One quick comment. There's no way that we could do a lawsuit by ourselves. We could not afford it. Period.
All right. Thank you. Lane, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but signing on to this lawsuit doesn't prevent us from joining future lawsuits, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Chelsea?
Well, it would prevent us from signing on. It would prevent us from signing on to anything else related to Purdue, right?
I think so.
I don't even play an attorney on TV.
Okay, yeah. At any rate, what I was going to say is just to address the staff issues. Basically, what our responsibility is to fill out a claims form. And one of the things that I saw somewhere was that most of that information they gather publicly. So I do think the staff time is going to be pretty minimal. I think the larger risk here is just whether or not this is the best option, whether it forecloses on other options. For me, my worry is just that this is getting sprung on us, and I wonder if, there's a tactic going on there from the attorneys that might not be in our best interests. That's my concern. And actually, does Drummond Wilson have a fiduciary responsibility to us in that regard?
Of what?
They
Just
do, I
a
believe.
fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they're advising us to join this suit, and that they've not just vetted the lawyers, but they've vetted that this is the best possible outcome for us.
They have, and they were very much behind this. And I've never been approached by them. I don't think John has for anything like this. I don't think they don't solicit business. I think they just felt that this was in the best interest of all their clients, which is why they presented it to their clients.
The only reason that I was interested in this at all is I was contacted directly by Melissa Huey, who's like the senior partner at Drummond & Woodson, and I trust Melissa implicitly. She's always acted in our best interest in every district that I've worked for. So I think it's very unusual they'd come forward with something like this unless they thought it was in our best interest. So that's why we brought it to the board.
Thank you. Doug? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Not a word.
Okay, you guys can hear me now? So, this conversation would be a much better conversation for me if we had our attorneys here to talk to directly. I really feel that strongly about it because, I mean, they should be part of this conversation. If they're coming out to recommend that we join a lawsuit, I feel they should have been on this call with us. I am not comfortable with what I read in this contract. I agree with Amy 100% that this is terrible, what's happened. And I don't know much about it as you do, Lauren, because you deal with it on a day in, probably and regular basis. I know it's done tremendous damage to our children. I don't know what the impact or the financial impact has been to the district. I don't know how we're going to achieve that or figure that out even. And again, I go back to how many years are we going back? You know, how many years does this lawsuit go back? What else? These are questions I would like to ask Drummond and Woodson, our attorney, who we pay good money for. They're coming out and asking us to do this. Now, I would be in favor. I mean, I could make a motion to, you know, postpone this meeting on this vote if we needed to. I mean, I don't like the fact that we're pushed to the end of the month here to make this decision. Myself, personally, I don't feel comfortable with it at all. I want to know more stuff. And I mean, the only thing I can think to do is to postpone this vote and have a meeting with them there or in public, another Zoom meeting before the end of the month it occurs, so that I feel comfortable with what we're doing here, because I don't feel comfortable at all. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but personally, I don't.
I would second your motion to table and then have us maybe have a meeting next week. So that would give a week lead time still.
I mean, I would offer the amendment to postpone this vote to a date certain this month, if that's helpful, if you guys agree to that, so that we can get some more information from our attorney. I'd like to speak to him directly myself.
Well, I don't know if you're saying, you said I would offer it, so that's not, I am making the motion to amend the motion.
Well, we're in discussion format, so I'm asking the group here what their feelings are about it. So before I make the formal motion to do that, I would like to ask the group what they think about that.
Let me jump in and say, after reading the documentation, I'm completely comfortable joining this lawsuit. I think it's a no-brainer. It's a property tax relief lawsuit. Help like this from companies who helped. They didn't cause it. They helped make the situation so much worse.
I agree.
Gerald?
It's not going to cost us anything to delay the vote by a week or two.
Okay. Other comments to Doug's question? Carol?
I'm not comfortable doing it tonight.
Okay. Doug?
So I would like to make a motion that amend the motion so we delay this, and I'll let you tell me what date works for you, but we could do it till next Thursday or next Wednesday. I'll say July 22nd, that we'll have a meeting if we can, if we can meet with our attorneys.
Make it the 23rd, because the 22nd is an MCSD board meeting for Gerald and I.
Okay. All right, then.
How about according
we-
to Drummond and Woodson's availability?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we got to do it next week, though, pretty much, right? It has to be done by the 30th.
Yeah. Yeah, I think next Thursday is a logical date for you to make your motion to. The 23rd.
Okay, I'll go make it July 23rd then.
All right, is there a second? Chelsea seconds. Discussion on this motion. Let me just,
Amendment.
No. It's a motion, not an amendment. There's a motion to table.
yeah, until the 23rd, yeah. So would it cost us, I assume it would cost us money to have them join the Zoom call and provide some representation on their point of view.
Unless they want to do it for free,
Well,
we
shouldn't
can
they?
always ask them.
Well, they're going to get they're going to get a share of the attorney's things. So this is them drumming up new business. I think they should actually do it for free.
Okay. Yeah. Any further discussion on this motion to table until the 23rd? Seeing none, the superintendent will call the roll on this motion to table.
Okay, motion to table. Lauren Andrews,
No.
Amy Williams Spears,
Yes.
Susan Thomas,
Didn't hear you.
Susan Thomas,
Yes.
Doug Curtis Jr.,
Yes.
Lane Sturdivant,
Yes.
Gerald Wynan,
Yes.
Chelsea Averett,
Yes.
Mark Lewis,
Yes.
Carol Backoffner.
Yes.
Motion is 9-1, so the motion to table carries.
All right, so then we will have a meeting Zoom meeting next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. the normal time to reconsider this. And John and Peter, both of you will contact the attorney's offices to see if someone can be available. Hopefully, yeah, it's at no cost because it's a contingency kind of case. And we will go from there. We'll make that vote on that decision that next Thursday night. Gerald?
I don't think we should hope that they can be available. They need to be available.
Yeah.
Fine. Fine.
You can't make them available. They might have conflicts. If they can't make that time, then we'll come up with another time. People have schedules.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to make a decision by the 30th. That's all, right? So that's how we'll go forward with this. All right. That concludes our business meeting. And Chelsea, thank you for making motion to, yes, Gerald, go ahead.
No, I guess I'm mistaken.
All right. Chelsea, thank you for making the motion to adjourn. And Mark for seconding it. And that concludes our meeting at 7:32. And now we will merge into our workshop on what John and his team are looking at for reopening decisions that we'll all be making come August. I do want to welcome Wendy Jakes to the meeting. Thank you for being here. Stephanie, hey, and Stephanie I think has signed off, so she's not going to be a part of this part, I guess. I also want to welcome Lane Sturdivant from South Thomaston. Thank you so much. I think you told me that there was a town meeting and they said, hey, do you want to join? And you said, sure, but you can go ahead and sort of tell that story if that'd be okay with you.
Sure. I've lived in South Thomaston for a little over a year now, and they put out an announcement on the town website that they didn't have any candidates who'd taken out paperwork to be on the ballot, and so they were looking for write-in candidates at the town meeting. So I went to the town meeting, and it didn't seem like anyone was stepping forward initially, so I did so, and then there ended up being a vote. But yeah, I think when I saw that they didn't have anyone representing South Thomaston, and I've lived here for a while and I want to continue living here, I thought that this was something that would be good for us to have town representation.
Yes. Yes, so wonderful. Thank you so much. I know you from you worked for That Maine for a few years and in the Student Engagement Task Force and all your wonderful work there. And you're working where now?
So I'm an organizer for League of Women Voters of Maine and Maine Citizens for Clean Elections. It's a collaborative staff position.
Okay, great, thank you. So if we could just introduce ourselves quickly. So you know me, I'm Lauren Andrews and I represent Cushing. And Susan.
Hi, Lane. I'm Susan Thomas. I'm your neighbor in Owl's Head.
Carol.
I am Carol and I represent Rockland, one of the reps from Rockland.
Chelsea.
Hi, Lane. I'm Chelsea. I represent Rockland, and I look forward to working with you.
Gerald.
Lane, you'll remember me as the architect for the Out Maine office renovation.
Ah, yeah, okay. Doug?
Hey, Elaine, I'm Doug Curtis in Rockland, and I am a taxpayer in South Thomaston.
Nice. Okay. Amy?
Hi, Lane. I'm Amy Williams, and I'm in Thomaston, and my story is very similar to yours. I put my ring in the hat on election day because nobody was running, and then I roped Mark in.
All in one swoop, as I recall, yeah. All right, Mark?
Hi, Lane. I'm Mark, and I'm Amy's cohort in Thomaston. Look forward to working with you.
And Wendy, if you could introduce yourself too, please.
Hi, I'm Wendy Jakes. I teach 5th grade at Ash Point, so one of your schools, your school. Also chief negotiator for the Seacoast Education Association.
All right, and you know Pete and John. So thank you all very much for doing that, and Lane, welcome aboard, as we say on the board. Before we get going, and John will start us off, I just want to say that I think we could entitle our plan eventually as Stay Safe, Stay Open, because if we do stay safe in our schools, we can stay open in our schools. So it pretty simply sort of encapsulates, I think, what we're going to try to do. I also want to emphasize to you, the school board, is that just to remember our responsibility, which is that we're supposed to fly at about 30,000 feet. We're supposed to see the past, the present, and the future all the time, and make the big policy decision and budget decisions together on where to go. We don't necessarily get in the weeds typically, but in terms of this kind of a plan, we want to remember, what our role is. But at the same time, while we trust our amazingly capable staff, we need to know that the buck stops with us, the 10 of us. The 10 of us will hear everything that they put together, and we'll approve the big picture of the reopening plan like we do anything. So just remember that. We have to trust our amazingly capable staff, and the buck stops with us. Whatever we decide, the 10 of us have to make that decision together. So just to remind everybody of what we got coming up here, like in every big issue. So John, you want to start off with what you want to discuss tonight or present tonight for?
I'm happy to, and I'll start with a little caveat, and that is my internet connection seems to be pretty unstable. All of you are sort of fading in and out, so
Okay.
we'll try to muddle through this as best we can. At the last workshop, we had several board members that encouraged us to reach out to the public for public opinion, public comment, and we've done that. I have the results of a public survey tonight, and also comments from the public that I'll share with the board. We've done the same thing with staff, and I'll share those results. I do not have further details on a reopening the plan tonight, but I do have some news. And that is, I learned in the statewide call with the commissioner that very soon requirements for health and safety for schools are going to be shortly forthcoming from the CDC and the Maine Department of Education. And once I have those, we'll have a much clearer picture of where we really need to focus our energies in terms of a final model for reopening. And I expect those within the next couple of days. And that's actually really good news. The DOE is going to lay out what school systems have to do, the must-dos, for reopening safely. And they're also going to inform us of the status of our particular regions, whether we're in the green, yellow, or red mode, according to their template, which is the same template that we use. So that's really good news because we've been waiting for that for some time. I'm glad it's coming at least before the end of the month. So that'll give us time to focus. As you know, we've been working along 3 lines of thought: in-person, full in-person instruction with safety, health and safety guidelines in place, some form of a hybrid model, which would be some form of in-person instruction, probably along with some virtual instruction, and then finally fully virtual. So I'm very happy to have that news from the Department of Education. It's encouraging, and I think it's going to be helpful. So believe it or not, I'm actually happier than I was a little bit ago. Any questions, discussion around that piece before I get into the surveys?
My question is, and I asked you before if you can address this. You know, we get direction and or guidance from the state, and we get direction and or guidance from the federal government. So what, you know, school districts in America are pretty autonomous, you know, and I just don't know how it all breaks down. You know, if the main DOE says you shall or you must, I mean, we got to do that. And when do they do that? When do they don't do that? When can they do that? When can't they give us that kind of direction? And then the federal government too.
Well, first of all, the Maine Commissioner of Education, the Maine Department of Education, basically, you know, gives authority for school systems to operate. That's their function, and they're also a support system for schools. And they also deal with school funding. The governor has powers over the state. The governor, you know, obviously can direct matters at the state level in terms of emergency actions, executive orders, and so on. We've seen that during the course of the year. Really, the federal government, our only, our strongest tie with them, I guess, as I would say, is the money that flows from them to the state. So very little direct influence or direct action over local school systems from the federal government. It's all federal government to the state. So I talked to the commissioner. That's my connection. I don't take directives from the federal government. I take it from the commissioner. Commissioner's been working with the Maine CDC in a committee to determine these safety guidelines. We've been meeting with her regularly once a week since this whole thing started. So once a week since March. Well, actually, I've been meeting with her twice a week since March because I'm not only president of the Midcoast Superintendents Group, but I'm also the regional representative. So I'm in a lot of those meetings. So I'm very confident and comfortable with what they're going to come out with. And I know with our talented staff and our talented administrators and our supportive school board that we'll be able to come up with a great plan that keeps kids safe, keeps staff safe, and provides them with a great education, no matter what model that we're in.
So does that mean that she can say you shall open this way?
They can require us to do certain things to open.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carol.
They can do that.
Okay.
My question is, and I think it's good news too, John, that we're going to have something from them in a few days. But my question is, I know that the staff and you have been working diligently, and Stephanie, on possibilities for whichever thing it's going to end up being. And I'm just wondering, could we not see the details of those three possibilities ahead of knowing which one is going to be chosen, so that we can have time to digest what those details are? I have 2 pages of questions depending upon which option we end up with. But
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, can we see those? Like, if it's virtual, what are the details? If it's going to be hybrid, what are those details? If it's going to be full in person, what are the details? Can
My
we
answer-
look at those plans, please?
My answer is yes. We will see that. And I have purposely been holding back from doing that because we've had to have direction from the DOE. We had to have that. And I knew this was coming. And I saw no good purpose in going down a path only to find out It's the wrong one. I hate doing something twice or 3 times or however many times we have to do it because this is hard work. Really hard work.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah, John, do
Art-
you to bring the plan to our business meeting on Thursday, August 6th?
I will bring a detail of what we've fleshed out. Yes, I will.
Well, I assume you're going to give it to us a long time beforehand, but the point is it's going to be on the agenda for a vote on August 6th. If that's what you want to do, or a later date.
To approve it,
Yeah.
I'll take as long as the board wants. If the board wants to have more time to consider it, I'm happy with that.
No, I think that you need to decide as our leader, the educational leader, when is the right time to make the decision. But we do need to have a lot of time, like a week, to read it and really digest and get ready for a discussion. So
I
whatever
understand.
that is, if it's August 6th, that's fine. If you want it to be the next Thursday, we can arrange for that. You need to determine that for us and then give us 7 days to completely digest what you're proposing.
Yeah. So my answer to that is this, and I literally found this out a few hours ago, right?
Okay.
So I need time to digest it. My team needs time to digest it, and then we will come back and we will share. We'll be very transparent with the board. We'll share all of our documents with you ahead of time. So not a problem. But you've got to give me a little bit of time to look this over and present it to our team and go back to work in the direction that we feel is the most prudent.
Right. So
And I
planner by nature.
and I know it's short notice, folks, but I can't help it. You know what I mean? I literally cannot help it.
Fine. It's fine. If we're gonna decide and decide on the plan on August 6th, then we would want to get it, let's say by July 31st, that Friday beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're not ready, then I'm fine with that and postponing the vote to the next week after August 6th if you need more time.
Yeah, I'll communicate with the board just as soon as I have more info.
All right. Gerald.
I have a
Then-
follow-up.
Okay, Carol, follow up, then Gerald.
So what you're going to get to us is going to be the plan you propose or the details of the 3 options?
I'd say it would be both, Carol.
Okay, cool.
Gerald.
So
Doing
first, everyone knows that we're in a very fluid situation and we need to, I know it's difficult sometimes, but we need to understand that setting a time is not necessarily written in stone. So even though everyone wants to start school on September, the first Tuesday in September, whatever it is, the 3rd or 4th, maybe that's something that gets pushed back too. So everything is fluid and everything is negotiable here. It's an odd thing, but I think a lot of us are used to doing it now. I forgot my big point here was, I'm sorry, I've lost it. If I remember, I'll raise my hand. My apologies.
Yeah. Wendy, is there anything you want to add right now or wait till later? Anything you want to?
I just want to make sure the board is fully aware how hard people are working right now on these nearly impossible plans with the situation being so fluid. Our leadership has been tremendous. John, Stephanie Tribo, the committee chairs, I wouldn't want to name them all, but I do sit on quite a few of the committees, as John can attest. It's just unbelievable the amount of work that people are doing this summer on their own time, above and beyond, because we are so committed to the plans, whatever they are. We want to have a voice in the plans. The communication between the district and the SCA has been, very good. And we're constantly working with superintendent and Stephanie and getting ready to take some proposals to our membership, which are going to be essential to the possibility of opening. So they can have the best plan laid out, but it may be too expensive. We need cooperation from teachers and educational technicians. So there's so much that needs to be considered. And it seems like every time we answer one question, 10 more questions arise. So, I don't have a lot to say. I just want to make sure that the board is aware of how hard teachers and administration, especially administration, is working this summer. The hours have been tremendous.
We are aware.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Doesn't always seem like maybe the word on the street that we're working for a plan, but we really are.
Yeah.
And they are.
Yeah, it's a really good point to know that a lot of staff are working very hard above and beyond countless Zoom meeting hours, I assume, on committees, a number of committees, to put it all together with John and Stephanie and everybody else. It's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, the teachers have been great, and we couldn't do it without them. I mean, literally, I can't tell you what a great team effort it's been, and I really thank the teachers, and I thank Wendy personally for. I see Wendy in just about every Zoom meeting I'm in, apart from the board meeting. So I know she's really connected up with all of us. So.
All right. Thank you. Doug, did you have and then Gerald?
Wendy, thank you for your work. The day that you graduated from University of Maine, I never thought I would see you in this position, just so you know. I want to say there was one person that didn't get the survey, and that was me. I had a couple things. I didn't know how to bring it to the board. So if we want to give board input to these committees that are going on, how do we do that? Do email, John, to you, or what's the best way to do that?
So Doug, do you want to be involved in meetings in a committee, or just give input to a committee?
Well, I just had, I'm not going to tell educators how to do their job. I have some concerns. I'll give you one tonight that came up. South School just lost their 2 fifth-grade teachers. I would be concerned that we put 2 brand new teachers with little to no experience in that organization, as an example. That's something you handle. I don't handle that. But that would be something I would. The thing that I was most concerned about, and I wanted to talk to Stephanie about this, was from March on till the end of school, was the number of kids that were not involved in their education. I think the lower kids, I know if the younger kids like 2nd, 3rd grade, kindergarten, 1st grade, I was very concerned about that group of kids because I'm not sure how much learning actually took place for those kids via Zoom or whatever. And I, as a grandfather who was going to have a 5-year-old that's going to Thomaston Grammar School next year, I don't know how many Zoom classes she's going to take. So of course, I'm very much interested for all our students, not just for the little kids, but I think the little kids have been probably the ones I'm most concerned about. And Wendy, being an elementary school teacher, could probably talk to that, better than anybody else. But the fact that a good portion of our student population was not involved, and I wasn't really aware of that as well until Stephanie made her presentation, and the accountability piece, I'm very concerned about how we're going to do that in all 3 plans or whatever plans that you guys come up with, because my understanding was at the summer was a letter went out to the parents. I don't know if that was district-wide, but that said basically, hey, nothing's going to be graded. Everything's going to be pass-fail. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. And I think that's terrific that we did that. But if we go through a whole year of that, I would be concerned that kids would not be involved. And I'm more concerned about the accountability piece than anything else. And that's really kind of like, when you put the plan together, that's the thing that I would be really most interested in, because there's a big difference between a high school kid and an elementary school kid. And that's sort of like where I'm coming from on that.
Well, we've got a whole committee working on accountability, grading, the curriculum, student engagement, social and emotional engagement, health and safety, facilities. So I would say that any of that you'd like to be involved in, you just let me know and I'll tell you when they meet. Or you can just send me whatever you'd like to send to that committee for suggestions. We're happy. And that goes not just for you, Doug, but for anybody on the board. If you're interested in something, you want to jump into something, I'll give you the schedule. We're there all week long, starting basically at 8 o'clock in the morning and ending up anywhere 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So,
All right.
standing invitation.
Thanks, John. So Wendy, do you want something you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I'm actually, I think, stealing the superintendent's line here from one of our committees, but there's a difference between what we were doing in the spring, Doug, which was emergency learning, and what we're preparing for, which is remote learning. And I think that accountability piece is something that's definitely being addressed. So what remote learning looks like if we're in that situation will be very different than what the emergency learning looked like that we really weren't ready for, which I feel, we are now. So that's been a lot of the conversation. The rest
Folks,
assured, she's going to get a great education at Thompson Grammar School.
There you go.
Thank you, Wendy.
Folks want to see what the public had to say?
One second. Gerald, did you want to jump in now or wait? That's a wait signal, hand signal, because I didn't, okay. Yes, John, go ahead.
You ready for that?
Yeah.
All right, I'll see if I can share my screen, hopefully. Up. Can the host of this meeting, whoever it is, let me share my screen? Dr. Orrin, are you in?
You're good. You're co-host now.
Hang on.
So as John's looking for that, I think it's really, really worth noting that we in Maine are very, very lucky. I'm sure you've had conversations with people in your life, and I've had conversations with people I buy things from a store, like how lucky we are. Our numbers are going down compared to other parts of the country. There is and there will be this huge, huge debate and everything going on in the rest of the country about schools. In Maine, I just think, we're luckier. We just don't have the numbers and the fear factor as much, and we'll see what happens. But
Okay, can folks see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, this is the parent community survey. We had 445 responses. And you can see across the responses, we had a pretty good distribution. Let me get to a question. If we continue learning at home in the fall, do you anticipate childcare concerns during the week anytime in building instruction is not provided? You get a yes at 31.9, a no at 56, and a not sure at 12. So it does seem there are some significant concerns around childcare if we're not in person, which is not unanticipated. This goes to Doug's point about the emergency learning, and I thank you, Wendy, for pointing out that emergency learning is not the remote learning plan that we're coming up with for fall. We have to do that. Emergency learning was, guess what? You guys have a pandemic and we're going to shut you down, and you got about a week to get everything ready. That's what emergency learning is. And that's not kidding. That's a that's what happens when the superintendent gulps and says, okay, let's get moving. To what extent do you have confidence your child had success with learning new material at home? You can see very much is not quite 17%, somewhat at a little less than 43, very little, 26, and not at all at 13. So I would agree with Doug in that case, and this is no surprise. The parents didn't feel that emergency learning was particularly effective, and I would agree with that. Not to say that teachers didn't do a wonderful job of doing everything they could, but I don't think in many cases it was because of lack of quality or lack of effort or lack of planning on either our part or the teacher's part. It was that we were in the middle of a nationwide pandemic and a nationwide shutdown with people under stay-at-home orders and a lot of people out of work and all kinds of things going on. So I wouldn't attribute it to lack of anything necessarily on our part. I think it was a situation as much as it was anything else. So here we ask the question, please indicate how important the following precautions to make sure that students and staff are safe in returning to buildings. And if I hover over this, the first one is that the school is thoroughly cleaned at least once a day. That was a very high percentage. Students and staff wear face coverings during the school day. Staff wear face coverings during the school day. Students and staff wear face covering when social distance is not practical. Hand washing and hand sanitizer provided. Let me see if I can get rid of this so I can see. Sure about that one. Okay. Visitors and volunteers are limited in the building. Number of students in each class is reduced through an alternative schedule. Students only interact with those in their classes. Materials shared among students are cleaned in between use. School buses run at half capacity. Kind of split mixed results there. Bus driver wears a face covering. Food service wears a face covering. I'm just going to linger here for a moment. You folks see sort of a trend here? Because I certainly did when I looked at it. Lots and lots of interest and concern, I guess, around sanitation, hand washing, cleaning materials, and then, of course, the face mask issue.
My gosh.
How comfortable would your child be with wearing a face covering to school? Very comfortable. Came in at a pretty low 12.6%. Mostly comfortable, 22.5. A little comfortable, 26.5. Not at all comfortable, 36.6. And then a very small percentage, it's like 1.8, that child would be medically unable to wear the mask.
John, you assume you don't have the ability to break down what comfortable means, operationalizing that term.
Well, that was the way the question was asked, so take it as you will, I guess.
Okay.
How comfortable are you with sending a child to a school building every day this fall if health and safety measures are in place? Very comfortable, 37.5. Mostly comfortable, 26.5. So I'm actually glad to see this. It looks like, the public has got some confidence in us that if we, put in good health and safety measures, they seem to indicate that they're very comfortable or mostly comfortable sending their children to school. A little comfortable is 21.8 and not at all 14.2. It begs the question, what will our enrollment actually look like, right? If we need to begin the school year mixing both in-person learning at school and learning at home, please rank the ideas presented below to the most preferred to the least preferred, with blue being the most preferred, burnt orange or red the next, and the least preferred would be the yellow. So sending your child to in-person school only on certain days of the week that are predictable, consistent, and scheduled in advance. That seems to be the most popular. Sending your child to in-person school only on certain days of the week, predictable. You can see having your child learn at home one full-time every day. Seems pretty clear that in-person instruction is preferable. We asked about transportation. Are you able to provide transportation to school for your child? Look at that. 67.6% said they can. And 18.7 maybe, and 13.7 no.
John, do you have any idea if we could use CARES Act money or some federal money to give parents who are low income some sort of gas money or something? I mean,
I don't believe so.
barrier, they just don't have the
I doubt it very much.
Duplo money to get their kid to school.
Let's see. Is this a duplicate? No, I guess it's a duplicate.
One is to school and one's home from school.
Thank you. See, I'm glad we've got a teacher in the crowd here. I've been out of it too long. Home, so transportation home, pretty similar percentages. And this one, how could you get your child to school most often? Car, family, drop off, 66.5.
Wow.
And then 28 for the school bus, and then other. If we need to continue learning at home in the fall or need to transition back to that at some point next year, does your child have access to iPad or device to complete schoolwork? We had 387 that said yes to that, and 58, which kind of, I don't quite understand that because they're all the devices are out. So maybe it went home and stayed in the closet. I don't know, but that's an interesting number.
Could it be pre-K parents? Because they
I'm
don't.
sorry,
Maybe
Chelsea, go ahead.
pre-K and kindergarten. When do we actually give iPads?
When do we give? We gave them out before they all went home.
No, I mean for age wise. So pre-K probably doesn't have them. Do kindergartners?
Oh, that's a possibility. Yeah, pre-K wouldn't have them. So maybe maybe that's where some of that number is coming from, because we did get a lot of pre-K that responded to this survey. So yeah, thank you. We had 15 out of that number that responded. They still don't have Wi-Fi. That's a number that's actually low enough. We could probably parse that out and deal with it. Provide that. Food service. We've got all meals provided from home, 55.7, and then 37.8 participating in the USDA school lunch program. If we need to begin remote learning or transition to remote learning, how you plan to have your children or child fed? 81.8% in that circumstance say they would be provided at home. 11.2 would need them delivered, and then 7% say they could pick it up. And then we had 200 responses, which we just left as open-ended comments with the board member's suggestion, and I don't intend to go through all those comments with the board, but what we will do is we'll give the same document to you, and you can look through them, and we certainly are, to pick up on anything that folks want to tell us or anything that we may have forgotten to ask. So thoughts on the parent community survey? Any questions?
I would
Thoughts?
say the transportation part, that if we can work to avoid kids on school buses, that's better. If we can take advantage of, there are a lot of parents who either do or maybe can bring their kids to and from school, I would think that would help with any possible communication of the disease if it crops up. So that's just
The
one of
committee I am on is recommending that we recommend to parents, if they are able to pick up their kids, that they do that.
Yeah, it's just a smart. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons we asked that question is we wanted to try to gauge capacity. And it looks like, for the most part, that more parents could bring their children to and from school.
And even if, a couple of parents decided to help each other get their kids to school. Chelsea.
I was going to ask, we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, but I just wanted an update. What are we thinking about for the parents who are not comfortable sending their kids to school? We had talked a little bit about maybe having an ongoing remote learning system in place. Is that something that we're thinking about? Because I imagine when we get to the staff, we're also going to see some staff members who don't feel comfortable. So it seems like we've got potentially some synergy there.
We're working on that question. I'm not going to give out details yet.
Okay.
But it's certainly one of the things that we're working on.
I can't see everybody. I'm scrolling through. So like if your hand is up, just go ahead and talk. I mean, I can't see everybody. So.
Hi, Lauren.
And I can't.
Hi, Lauren, it's Gerald. One thing, I totally agree that if we can minimize the number of students on buses, that's going to help the bus runs, but it's going to create a real bottleneck at some of our schools as far as parents picking up and dropping off their kids. It's already a bottleneck at TGS. I assume South School too. The high school is different because so many of the students drive. So that's something that we need to address from a facility standpoint. And I think we just have to put our heads around it a little bit. And I actually do remember what I wanted to mention earlier. about getting the plan to us as a board. That, you know, John says he needs time to process things. The board needs time to process things. Parents and families need time to process all of this as well. And which is my whole point about, do we actually start in school when we normally would? We need to give families as much time as they need to kind of come to grips with all this as well. And we really can't lose sight of that.
Very good points.
Just speaking from my building, I know the conversations have already started about staggered pickups because we do recognize that that would create a problem. So that conversation is happening.
Folks want to move on to the staff survey? I'll see if I can get us there.
Could I just ask a quick question, John?
Sure.
Yeah, this is part of the details you're going to address when you release the full plan, but maybe you could talk a little bit about this. But if we do get the kids back, either part-time or full-time, I'm kind of wondering about a trigger. Just say an outbreak or even just a small rise in cases happens. Is that going to be a local decision, or are we going to wait for recommendations from the CDC or the main DOE? I mean, and is it going to be just to that particular school, or will it be a district-wide thing? Those are all questions kind of buzzing in my head as we talk about, part-time, full-time, all that too. What will be the trigger? Has that been determined?
Well, so the answer to that is we do consult with the CDC. We'd also consult with local emergency management, our local epidemiologists, and the Department of Education, and ultimately we act on their recommendations. So I would say it would be different in different circumstances.
It would just seem to me it would be something we need to act on quickly before we, get too many people in the fold and consult with, this. I mean, we can't drop on a dime either, but I understand that, but it seems like something we'd have to move on rather quickly.
Yeah, well, we were prepared for that before we had the shutdown.
Having that policy in place is what I mean, Mark, by the buck stops with us. So John needs to propose the best plan he can devise. And of those major points like that, we need to make that decision. The buck stops with us on that big stuff like that. Carol.
Yeah, I have a question about testing. Are we going to regularly rapid test our students and staff, because temperatures won't do it? So what is are we working on a plan for having rapid testing? We just lost a school nurse. What does that mean for us in terms of testing? Because right now, testing is a big problem across the whole country, and I think it's better in Maine, but we've got, 1,500 kids going in every day. We don't know where they go after or before, and same for staff. And all it takes is one or two people to be infected and not be symptomatic, and we have a problem. And then what do we do about quarantining and contact tracing? So I hope we're working on that.
Yeah. Again, I hear your concern, I hear your question, and things that we're thinking about, but I'm not going to get into details tonight.
It's just on my mind and it worries me. It keeps me up at night.
Gee, me too. Me too.
I'm sure. You more than me, I'm sure.
But to reassure you, we do have a full nursing staff back on.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention, the board gave me authority to hire, and I hired a new nurse.
Good.
Good one, too.
All right, thank you. Amy.
I don't want to be Chicken Little here, but we're making decisions now in mid-July, and the numbers look pretty good in Maine, except that if you're reading the news carefully, there's an increase in the number of people who have detected illnesses who are not Mainers, who are having contact with Mainers. And August is traditionally a vacation month. And so people from Maine are going to be feeling safe and good about things and going off on vacation, and there will be a huge probably influx, not like a normal August in Maine, but there's still going to be a number of people are going to come to Maine, especially given that our numbers look so good right now. And all of that could be a recipe for a huge uptick in September, just as we're opening schools. And I'm concerned about that. And I'm concerned about whether or not, this is a separate thing, but I'm just going to say it while I'm talking, is that if I had a kid in the school, I don't think I would be comfortable sending them back in September, even though the numbers look really good. And so what are the contingencies for those parents? Are we just going to use a traditional homeschooling plan for parents that don't want to send their kids back, even if the state says send them back? Or what do we do about that?
So I'll just say again, we're taking things like that into consideration, but you know, I've got a 3-word response to most of these questions. I don't know, you know, because it's going to depend on where we are in terms of green, yellow, red, right? So Amy, you're absolutely right. Conditions can change, and that's why we're developing 3 different contingencies, because we recognize we're going to have to be fluid and adaptive.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
the possibility of flu season being so much worse because it's flu and COVID season in the winter could force us to make changes on the fly. So I think that's, you know, part of the plan that we approve is a system that can change with the needs of the year, if and when things evolve.
Want to look at the staff numbers real quick?
Yes.
I'll pull them up, see if I don't lose you guys.
Chelsea, you have a question right now? No, okay. Okay, John, go ahead.
All righty, we got 292 responses.
Yep.
Job,
Out of how many staff?
let's use 400 probably for a number.
Response rate is huge, is what I'm making the point. We had a good one
Yeah.
for, this is obviously an enormous response rate.
Yeah, no, good response rate. Lots of teachers. Quite a few administrators, and then you can see the other categories in behind there. But this, I'm very happy with the response rate. So here we go. Please indicate how important the following precautions are to make sure students and staff are safe. Schools thoroughly cleaned once a day. Students and staff wear face coverings. Staff wear face coverings. Students and staff wear face coverings where social distancing is not possible. Hand washing. Hand sanitizing. Visitors, volunteers are limited. Number of students in each class is reduced through an alternative schedule. Students interact only with those in their classes. Materials shared amongst students are cleaned in between use. School buses run at half capacity. And bus drivers wear face covering. And if you notice, and I'm sure you have noticed, there's quite a direct parallel between a lot of these, like hand sanitizing and washing hands, schools being clean, and so on. So those seem to be pretty broad commonalities.
John, I have two questions.
Sure.
When you say schools being cleaned daily, I assume that's a more thorough cleaning than normally happens. Because
Yeah.
obviously the schools are cleaned every day.
Yeah,
And
this is thoroughly cleaned at least once a day. So we've actually the Health and Safety Protocols Committee is taking that one on. We're making some recommendations that are much more vigorous than normal for sure.
And then I didn't see anything about buses being cleaned.
It's there.
No, not on this survey.
Oh, that's buses that have.
But you do know, the board is aware, I think, that we bought those units that you can disinfect a bus or a classroom very quickly.
I just want to point it out that
Yeah.
we will be addressing that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
How comfortable would you be wearing a face covering to school?
Wow.
So, 35.6 and 29.8 are either very comfortable or mostly comfortable, a little comfortable, not at all comfortable, 13.4. And then we have 2.78 respondents say they wouldn't be able to wear one due to some medical condition.
I have a question about this too.
Yep.
This is for Wendy. Wendy, what's the union's position about this?
I guess I wouldn't want to take a position for the association at this point.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question also. When we talk about masks, we're not talking about face shields at all. We're just talking about masks. Is that
This
correct?
is face covering, so I think that would be pretty broad.
So
Doesn't say-
I think you also need to look at the question. How comfortable would you be wearing it? I mean, I had a doctor's appointment today and I had to talk the whole time. It wasn't really comfortable. It was hot. So that question might just be simply, is it going to be comfortable all day? I mean, it's not going to probably be comfortable, but it doesn't mean that it's not an absolute necessity for people.
Right.
Maybe we should have asked, would you be willing to wear a face covering?
Correct. I really think this is the question. It's just that's my opinion.
Nobody, I think, is comfortable with them.
Exactly. And I think the same thing was true for kids. Is it going to be comfortable for them? Well, probably not, but.
Well, we took a shot at it. I mean, sorry.
I wouldn't apologize, John, I think.
Yeah, I know. I'm not, believe me. All right, let's see. If we need to begin the school year mixing both in-person learning at school and learning at home, please rank the ideas presented below, the most preferred, the least preferred. Offering in-person instruction at school for smaller groups of students only on certain days of the week that are predictable. That seemed to match up pretty well with what we got from the parents. Having students learn at home full time every day. You can see I think our staff recognizes that even if we could get, let's say, a modified week of in-person instruction would be preferable to full-time all the time at home. But, again, we've got a plan for those contingencies. So this is staff childcare concerns. If we consider some kind of a blended scenario, do you anticipate childcare concerns during the week anytime you're required to be in the building? No, 64.4. But we have a yes, a little shy of 20%. So for our staff as well, there are some concerns around childcare in that blended scenario. Let's see, indicate your comfort level resuming your role in district in person, assuming the state authorizes us to do so by the start of the year, and assuming we'll incorporate safety measures. Very comfortable, 44.5. Somewhat comfortable, 23.3. Unsure, 18.2. Somewhat uncomfortable, 9.6. And 13 respondents said they're not comfortable at all.
Can I just ask a question that came to my head? Did anyone here on this call had to wear a mask for 7 hours straight every day?
Could you say that again? I didn't hear your question.
Does anybody on this Zoom call had to wear a mask 7 hours a day, every day for 5 days a week?
I have not, but my sons have.
When I worked as a nurse, yes.
So my question is, this mask thing is really bothering me right now because I can imagine we might start the year off and everybody's doing it, but a full year, it's going to be tough. And that's one of the most important things that we got to do. So anyway, just wanted to ask, because I wear one for an hour in Hanover to go shopping. I can't wait to get it off. So I just worry about staff and students and the ability to wear a mask for like 7 hours every day. It's just going to be tough.
I agree with that, but also if you've had to wear anything like braces, how many of us have had braces and it's miserable for the first couple of days, but then you just get used to it. So I don't know.
It's one of those things you get acclimated to. No one likes it in our office, but we do it. And, and we've also encouraged all of our patients to do it, and they bring up the same concerns. But, oftentimes I find myself walking around even after all the patients have gone home, still wearing my mask. I've even forgotten about it. So it's
okay.
You just get used to it.
All right, good to hear. That's why I asked.
My concern with masks too is the follow through all times when you're in the school building, because if you take it off for lunch, you take it off to get water, kids might go into the bathroom and they might take it off as a breather when they're in the bathroom, and then they might breathe on or touch surfaces or cough on surfaces. So like then there's issues about the sanitation in between with bathrooms, and I'm sure you all are thinking about that. But I know that wearing a mask is something you can get acclimated to for long periods of time, but people do take them off at certain times for like food and water and things like that. And so like when they're doing that, making sure there's like safety protocol in terms of like the sanitation around those surfaces and those spaces where they might be taken off.
Okay, good point. Yes.
And the masks aren't just for airborne, but we touch our faces all the time. And when you're touching your mask, you're not touching your face. So it's really important to stop that, to impede that natural impulse.
I think it's just really hard for little kids though to control their impulses, and it's really hard for teenagers to control their hormones. So I think there's going to be kissing in high school, and there's going to be, goofy kids doing things that 6-year-olds do. I
think it's going to be one of those things where education, and there's no, as we keep on saying, the new normal. It's going to take a few weeks, if not a few months, to get people on board with this and get acclimated to this, and constant hand washing, hand sanitizer all over the place. Teachers monitoring the hall, saying, "Hey, you with the hands, face mask on," or it's going to be a process like anything else. Not to mention the very act of wearing the face mask itself. But I think it's doable. And quite honestly, you see in some of the Asian countries that have been doing this, years before us. So you see the people in Japan and China, walking around with face masks all the time. I mean, it's just part of their culture now. But I'm sure it's something that they just didn't start doing overnight. And that's where
we're not real disciplined like those countries, though. In fact, we're not disciplined at all. I'd go so far to say in the relativeness of it. And I want to know who's going to police that. And some little kid needs to go to the bathroom. Is somebody going to go in and then sanitize that bathroom? Because they're going to touch stuff. They're going to lick the windows, whatever little kids do. And I don't know how it's going to be so time consuming to monitor both social distancing, touching, face touching, mask wearing. And if we don't have buy-in from home, we're not going to have it. We're just not going to. If some parent says, it's against your constitutional right to freedom to not wear a mask, and my kid isn't going to wear a mask, what do we do then if we've decided kids should wear masks? Then what do we do? So I'm sure John and all the team is working on this like crazy, but I should send you all my 2-page list of questions and concerns. Maybe it'd be better for me to just stop talking and send it, but I have
Well,
concerns.
yeah, I mean, I think we got to get out as much as we got to get out tonight, but I do want to, John, go back to you if you want to continue, then we can, after the presentation about the staff responses, we can get back into our discussion. And questions.
Thank you. I'm almost done.
All right.
I do have something I'd like to say though. And that is, it's been my experience through this pandemic that educators can do anything. Literally anything. It's the most amazing group of people I've ever worked with in my entire life. We've got a fantastic administration, a fantastic group of teachers, supportive parents. What we need more than anything else is your support. And with your support, we can make this work, whatever it looks like, however we have to change it, whatever we have to do, we can do it. I guarantee you that we can do it.
Well said. Very well said.
And I should
that's
say the position of the SEA, to Gerald's point, a position I will take for the SEA is that we're committed to bringing our staff and students back safely. But that's the same position that I know John McDonald has, and obviously, hopefully the same position you have. Based on our county information right now, I feel very hopeful and extremely optimistic that we will be able to be back in person doing the job that we want to do, which is teach kids.
Stay safe, stay open, right?
Stay open, stay safe. Is that your line?
Um,
Did I steal that from you? See, the committees are running together now, or the meetings.
Test, trace, contact trace.
John, you want to, Doug, you want to say something before we go back to John? Doug?
Yeah,
No, you just turned yourself off. Yep.
sorry. I know John didn't address this in his presentation about the staff and students, and it looks like both of them lined up pretty well together, which I thought was good. I did have 2 specific questions. When we get the main CDC guidelines, John, those guidelines will tell us certain things that we have to do or I guess should do. I'm not sure what it will tell us. But along like face coverings, which we just talked, we all know is very important. The longest I'm able to keep mine on is about an hour and a half. While I'm talking, I have to keep pulling it up constantly while I'm talking. And I'm sure that that's the same issue for everybody who wears one. But there is a difference, obviously, between young kids, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, and older kids. And I don't know what all the studies show. Obviously, I think people are concerned. If I was a teacher, I would be concerned about possibly contacting me from a student that came in, that sort of thing, as anybody else in the community that might be an adult. But at the same time, the studies have shown that there's very low transmission rate from really young kids. And I know some countries, young kids don't wear masks, and the older kids do, that type of thing. Well, I'm a little unclear about, and I don't know how to say this really, but if the state comes out and says, you have to do X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean that we can't do Z, Y, and X as well. Is that correct? So in other words, if we want to impose higher, stricter standards, are we allowed to do that?
yes, we are.
Okay. And the other question I have is along the cost of doing this. I know Lauren sent out an email about the cost of reopening and all that sort of thing. And I have no feel for that either as well. Do we have any inclination about what we might get for funding at all, for CARES Act funding?
The CARES Act funding is right around $600,000.
We haven't heard about getting any more though, correct? That's it.
Not yet. I'm always hopeful.
Call your legislators.
Well, didn't they decide on the distribution of funds yesterday? and what's going to go to schools and everybody else, I don't know if that changed what we would get. But
Yeah, I don't know anything about funding beyond the CARES Act fund yet. That may happen. I know people are talking about it.
Call your legislators, because Congress passed the HEROES Act. They're waiting on the Senate, and that has $100 billion more for schools. So call your senators and tell them to pass that. That'll help us out a lot.
okay.
I think the Senate has $1 trillion bill coming forward, maybe when they get back into session. So there may be more money.
That would be good. All right, John, you want?
Can I ask one more, can I ask one question to Wendy as well? I'm sorry.
Good.
Wendy,
Yes.
I know that you're working hard on this, but tell me what you think about like little kids, about how this would work for them.
In what regard? Are you talking about social
Like
distancing?
face,
or
like,
mask wearing?
yeah, social distancing, yeah, wearing face masks, keeping them all in the same classroom, that sort of thing. Eating in your classroom.
So the health and wellness team took a lot of their information from the American Association for Pediatrics, and they're saying that students that stay in cohorts should be fairly safe. So I don't know that I want to give my personal opinion on this, but I do think that we can create an environment that is both conducive to learning and the safety of our children.
Let me jump in on that.
And if at any point that's compromised, I think we have a secondary plan in place.
Yeah, let me jump in on what you said, because it's rolling around in my head, which is the sort of biological unit idea, or biological pods. I mean, K to 5, they're naturally in a unit, right? They're in the classroom. But 6 to 12, they're not. And I don't know if you're looking at ways to keep students in these biologically contained units, because I would think that'd be the most protective. I think you just said that, Wendy, about the doctors or academy, whatever, because that does make sense to be most protective if you're around the same people all the time. If there's an outbreak, you can deal with it, and you're not mingling with hundreds of others. You're maybe mingling with 30 other people. I know that's really strange in high school and middle school, but it just may be one of the approaches that we need to take to keep kids as safe as possible and stay open.
Well, John can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the committees are looking at grade span recommendations.
What again, Nicole? What?
A grade span recommendation. So a recommendation for, say, a pre-K 2 might be different than a 6A.
Yeah.
Am
Right.
I incorrect, John? I know a couple of the committees are looking at that.
I can't think of anything that we're not looking at. Just to be honest with you.
So understanding that really it could look very different for pre-K to second grade than it might look for high school. And recognizing that, you know, it's not out of the, no scenario is out of the question. We might have very different scenarios at the different grade spans.
Well, I'll also say again that flexibility is a key. You know, when I was an elementary school teacher, we had one mantra, which was monitor and adjust. And we're going to need to do that in a big way.
Can you repeat that?
Monitor and adjust.
Ah.
And that's what we're going to have to do. No matter what plan we come up with. It may look great on paper, maybe the best looking paper plan there ever was in the world, but once the rubber hits the road, we're probably going to have to make some adjustments. I'm almost certain of it.
Okay, good points again. So go ahead, John, return, we'll finish up the survey, staff survey.
I'm done with it. That was it. And we will supply the board with both those surveys, inclusive of all the comments that you can peruse at your pleasure.
Something else that's been on my mind too is if we go to hybrid or we shut down for a while in any school at any time, how will we track students? Because when they go home, it's, we just don't know what's happening with them as much as humanly possible. So that's one of my big concerns about this COVID year is that if and when we go hybrid or shut down, how are we going to track our kids as to how they're doing socially, emotionally, and academically? Gerald.
Well, something that's been on my mind too about the K-5 schools is equity. If we have an infection in one of the schools, we need to shut it down. How long would that happen, and what does that mean for those students in that school? I mean, it could be one kid that shuts down an entire school, an entire building. The equity thing is really a key for me, because they're all feeding into the middle school. And we can't have one school that's been behind for a month while the other schools continue on. Like, how do we address that?
Okay. Yep. Again, for John and Wendy, we're just throwing out our questions and ideas. We don't expect answers tonight. This is a time for all of you just to put out your thoughts, your questions, put them out, because the more they have from us now, the more they can use to put together the whole thing ultimately for us to vote on. And I sound melodramatic, but it's probably the most important vote you'll ever make in your school board career. And as John said, we'll have to change and modify as time goes on, but still, I don't think there's anything else we've faced that's like this in terms of our job collectively to do and to do well. Doug.
Yeah, I kind of have like one last comment. It goes back to what Gerald was talking about earlier. And I don't have the school calendar right in front of me, but I do think it's important to give our students, our parents, our staff, our faculty, plenty of notice and plenty of time to prepare whatever we come up with. And looking at the school calendar, I assume that that's still going to be flexible. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I know that Labor Day is late this year, it's the 7th. I know what the intent is probably to start academic instruction prior to that. But I mean, if we needed more time, I guess this question would be for John. Is it possible to start later and then go later?
So I've never been shy about asking for something that I need. So I may do that.
Okay.
I think we're supposed to start on the 8th, by the way, if I'm right.
Okay.
Lane.
Yeah, I don't know if you would have an answer for this, or if this is something that's sort of waiting from state guidance and all that. But I'm curious about testing capacity, and how having schools open would just ramp up like exponentially the need for testing. If you're trying to do some sort of testing regimen, if you're assuming that young children in particular might contract the virus but not present symptoms, which I think is what people are sort of seeing a lot. You would have to be testing students on a fairly regular basis, I would imagine, because you're not going to necessarily get students that are presenting unless you're assuming that you're going to wait for it to spread to an adult, like a household member or a teacher. And then when that person presents symptoms, that's when you do testing. But I guess my wonder is, like, would testing would what I imagine would be limited testing capacity in general, like state and nationally speaking, would testing be like a reaction to a symptomatic individual within the school system, or would there be any capacity to do it as a sort of preventative or like regular sort of thing?
That's in the medical realm, not our realm. We don't make those decisions.
Okay, so that would be like
Entirely
CDC
up to
guidance?
entirely up to the CDC and local epidemiologists and their personal care physicians. So all we can do is basically say the child is presented with the symptoms, and then after that, it's up to the medical profession to decide on a course of action. We don't do testing at all.
Okay.
Can we pose that question though to someone who is in charge of that, to put it in their mind so that they're thinking about it and thinking ahead?
I'm not sure who I'd ask, but I can I will keep that question fresh, and when I'm in my next regional meeting, I'll throw it out there and see what people say.
Do we know what the surrounding districts are going to do yet, or they don't know and Midcoast doesn't know? Because our schedules are supposed to gel. So,
Well, I'll answer that question this way. I don't know how they know what they're going to do because they haven't received the guidance from the DOE just as we haven't received it. So,
but we're going to have to get together with all of them and have our schedules be the same once we all do know.
no, we've already done that. We've got our calendar set.
Okay.
They're going to have the same flexibility that we do. What they end up doing may not be what we end up doing because conditions in their district may be different. So, though we all meet together and we all plan together and we all share information together and make some joint decisions together, we're not dependent on what they do, and the reverse is also true.
Do we have options to set our own contingencies in case there are, let's say everybody goes to school, the numbers are low, but we have parents that are not comfortable sending their kids to school. Can we create our own options for them, or are we dependent on DOE guidelines for that sort of thing?
Now we have local control. All the DOE is going to do is tell us what we must do to open schools.
Okay. Because I just want to say that I after I expressed that concern, I got a text message from a mother who has a kid in the school system who said that she really does not want to send her kid to school, even if they open. So and that's just anecdotal, one person that I happen to know.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen. There's going to be, even if we're really safe in Maine compared to other places, we've got a great plan in place, obviously. Some parents and or kids will be like, nope, not going. So we got to be ready for that.
There are going to be higher instances of homeschooling statewide, probably nationwide, I would say.
Yeah.
Just a fact.
Yep. Anything else? Seeing
Ladies and gentlemen of the school board, I will get you information just as soon as I have it available to me.
yeah, so
and
you'll
able to share
you'll forward the DOE thing that comes out, or we'll get it from the school board association.
when it becomes public, you will have it.
Okay.
Thank you, John, and your staff and all the teachers, and Wendy, please convey to the committees that we're so appreciative of the hard work that's being done. It matters everything to us.
Yes.
We can make
Yes.
no decisions without your work.
Yes.
Thank you all.
You all. Yep. Agreed.
Absolutely.
Have a
All right.
great evening.
Thank you all for being here. See you next Thursday night.
Yes.
Okey-dokey.
Bye all.
Bye.